The red knot in Texas is one of the big unknowns. We know that birds come from the Arctic and winter in Florida. We know they make that long migration down to Tierra del Fuego. But there's a group of red knots that come through the coast of Texas, and few winter here, but most of them are heading straight through to some unknown wintering area. So the goal of our work is to try to figure out how many there are and where they're wintering, and then ultimately where they're breeding. I mean, we know it's in the Arctic, but where in the Arctic, we don't know. We start with a judgment of what the behavior of the birds, can tell us, and then we lay out the net, try to set it so that the outer edge, the catch area, which is about 8 meters wide, gets right to covers the spot where we think the birds are going to be. And then we set 2 cannons with big projectiles, and that we have to angle like the cannon so that it really depends on the wind and the elevation. So, you know, the wind today was coming right off the sea, and that if we don't correct for that, then the wind will just pick up the net and blow it like a umbrella or something. So lower the cannons a bit so the net's sort of firing right at the wind, and then the wind lifts it up enough so it doesn't actually hit the birds. Then we get all that set up, then run the wire that powers the cannons, and then finally put a line called a jiggler right out in front of the net, about 2 feet out from the net, so that if the birds get too close to the net and so therefore are in danger because the net will, you know, come off like this and hit them. First job that we have is to make sure the birds are safe. We need to calm them down, because once they're under the net, then they, you know, they're flopping around like this and they start abrading their feathers on their wings. So we quickly cover them with dark material so that comforts them. The darkness, they just sort of sit down and wait. Then we get the birds out of the net into the keeping cage, and then cover the keeping cage so that it's also dark, and then the birds calm down. Then we start our work, which is first putting a metal band on, and then the flag that gives a unique ID to the bird, so that you can see that ID with a spotting scope, and then we don't have to recapture it again to know where it is. And then I went to David, and he was measuring the bill size and the head, bill, and then the wing, and that helps us relate the size of the body to the weight. And then David also weighed it, and then it went on to Scott and John, and we had different people doing it, Ron, and they were taking a one wing covert out, and that feather's used to determine the isotope signature of that reflects the place where that feather was grown, which is usually the wintering area. So we're trying to develop a isotope profile for every wintering area, so then when we catch birds in the stopovers while they're migrating, then we can take that feather and know where it was wintering. And then finally it came to Winnie and I, and we were putting on the geolocators. The bird is being considered for federal listing, and so that's because of problems outside of Texas. Primarily because of the collapse of one of the major stopovers for knots, which is the Delaware Bay. And that collapsed because of overharvest of horseshoe crabs, because the knots are eating the eggs of the horseshoe crab before they go into the Arctic. And so they're desperate in need of them, and because there weren't any, their survival rate went down and they weren't reproducing, so the population crashed by about, right now we have about 1/5 of what we once had, only about 15 years ago. So the red knot is sort of the one species of Arctic nesting shorebirds that's getting recognized because of these other problems like Delaware Bay. And the more we know about knots, the more it tells us about all the other shorebirds. And so I think we can do not only a good job for red knots, but we can do a good job for all other Arctic nesting shorebirds. The crew today was experienced enough in their own work, as well as helping us last time, that all went really smoothly. Like, all the birds left in good condition, and so that's ultimately the mark of success, because we can always do the work, but if the birds come out at the end and they're limping or can't fly well, or they look weak or something like that, then you know that there's a problem. We didn't have any injuries. We didn't have any mortalities. So, couldn't hope for anything better than what happened today.